People say I'm lucky. I don't know why.
This just in. Nymphs makes leprechauns cry.
ESGN TV's daily news. Just watch.
We hope you prepared for more fight nights.
Game number 2, Chakki. He's up 1-0, has to be feeling pretty good, and not a bad starting hand, other than maybe don't really need the Tink.
He doesn't have, you know, we don't see Nat Pagel in his hand yet, and he is on the draw again. Artosis on the play has a pretty nice opening hand.
Now I do have to say, DogeHouse, even back in previous seasons, have been toying with the idea of playing Murloc, but this is the first time they ever got to actually show their opponents that they're capable of doing it. What are some of the core key elements in your starting hand? Because with aggro, as much as Murloc might seem pretty derp, the opening hand is still pretty important.
It really is. You know, there are, you know, some one-drops that you really want to see almost all the time, and the Murloc Tidecaller really is one of them.
And you can just buff it up with a lot of Murlocs if you get it. But there are also some other cards that are pretty valuable as well, like a Young Priestess, like some of the Knife Jugglers also in the deck. What do you think about this and subbing some of the other classic Murloc cards like the Raider, or, you know, even just some of the other cards that we don't really see here?
Yeah, you know, I mean, actually that's something that a lot of players have been starting to do. Some of the Murlocs, even though they have fantastic synergy with the other Murloc cards, when you have them in combination, on their own, they're really just not as powerful. Some of them are, you know, super explosive and super consistent, almost no matter what situation you play them in. Cards like the Grimscale Oracle and Murloc Raider, the one-drops that only have 1 health, are really not that powerful on their own. And so some people have been, you know, starting to scale back on them, like Artosis here, or cutting them completely from their list and almost playing like a hybrid between the standard Warlock, aggro, and Murlocs.
Ooh, okay. So now that we've kind of centered back here on turn number 2, Artosis is kind of caught up in impasse if he wants to deal with the Argent Squire or if he wants to drop the Bluegill Warrior. Most of the time, people kind of say it's a notion to just keep attacking, keep up the aggression. But against a Tempo Rogue, is that such a good idea?
Yeah, you know, I mean, he's kind of in a tough spot here because, you know, considering he's playing Murlocs against, you know, a Rogue who has just played, you know, an Argent Squire, the card that he'd love to see more than anything else is a Voidwalker, so that he can, you know, maintain that tempo as much as possible. Artosis is going to have to come up with something to deal with it. He decides to use his Owl, take off the shield, bash into it. He has still his Murloc in play.
And one thing that is also very important to note is that Artosis, according to his deck list, only has 1 Owl, and that's usually to bypass a taunt if you want to go for a big finish with something like a Leroy and a Power Overwhelming.
Yeah, in this game, he's just going to try to stay ahead on board as much as possible. You know, Rogue isn't going to play, you know, any Druid of the Claw or anything like that that's going to get in his way. So if he keeps the board clear of all minions as much as he can, he won't have to worry about anything like, you know, possibly, you know, Defender of Argus coming down and making a huge taunt.
There's nothing too massive that he has to worry about. In this scenario, though, he plays pretty straightforward, dropping the Murloc Tidehunter and buffing his own Tidehunter up as much. Tidecaller.
Yeah, you know, his board is absolutely exploded in this turn. He's got the second Tidecaller, and he has, you know, he drew the double Murloc on top of it. At least Chakki picks up a backstab, so he's staying in the game. That would have been a very, very difficult turn to deal with, and now it looks like he has at least some options with what he wants to do.
Yeah, backstab the Tidecaller. He can also attack and even drop a Harvest Golem if he wants to, which is a very nice way to kind of stay on the board. Harvest Golem is a really great way to trade out 2, maybe even 3 for 1 sometimes with just a big body against Murlocs.
Yeah, you know, so he bashes down the Murlocs, you know, priority, because those are the cards that have synergy. He leaves the, you know, Iron Beak Owl up. Hopefully, he wants to be able to deal with that later. You know, Artosis is still in a tough spot.
He can dump his hand.
Can dump his hand. He can alternatively just start life tapping right now. He has the mana for it. That's the most mana efficient thing to do. Looks like he's going to go to dump his hand. I wonder if he's going to use his Murloc or his Owl to kill the remaining half of the damaged Harvest Golem.
Right, because if you have something like the War Leader come up, you can just buff all your Murlocs. But Artosis wants to be very damage efficient because he already had to leave 1 man on the board.
Yeah, he keeps, you know, just the naturally more powerful minion, which is, you know, the hedge between the two.
Oh man, this is excellent draw, an SI7 agent, so you can use a coin. drop the Bluegill Warrior. Very nicely done here by Chakki.
Yeah, Chakki, you know, on the past couple turns has been, you know, playing half of his turn straight off the top of his deck. He had other options, but it's really sort of keeping him parity on the board. And, you know, Artosis is going to have to start life tapping. And fortunately, he's still sitting on 30 life, now 28. So he really is, you know, definitely still in it. Let's see where this knife goes.
Either target would be pretty nice.
Either target would be
on
good.
The minions, but if he goes for the rogue instead...
Oh, he hits the SI7. That's probably ideal. You know, he might trade both of his minions in, you know, for his opponents and keep his larger ones. Because as of right now, as far as he knows, his opponent doesn't have a way to deal with it.
So, yeah, I completely agree in this scenario. Oh, but he wants to just, again, there's a lot of schools of thought, just keep doing as much damage as you can. And because he knew that he would be able to get one of the +1 health, maybe the Loot Hoarder could keep the Nut Juggler around, but fortunately gets on the Flamant, which is sub-ideal.
Yeah, so, you know, Chakki is sort of able to, you know, bash down, and he keeps removing and removing and removing these minions, but he's not able to pressure Artosis' life total. He's going to just start life tapping every turn, pick up, you know, 2 cards a turn, possibly even sometimes play 2 cards a turn, since, you know, the great majority of the curve, you know, for Artosis is so low.
It's the highest mana cost is 4, so
yeah, there's 2 cards that cost 4,
tapping.
And everything else is less.
Now the plays here from Chakki aren't that great either. He can, if he wants to deal with this young priestess, but he also wants to develop it because he has 5. In this scenario, do you feel like playing the Loot Hoarder or the Pig would be better?
You know, considering he does need to, you know, remove everything that he can and start pressuring his opponent's life total as quickly as possible. You know, he's playing the Loot Hoarder. He's trying to get, you know, that out there so that he can trade it off, pick up something else. It's, in a way, unfortunate because, of course, he'd love to play Nat Pagel, but he just can't do that yet.
And a little unfortunate that Artosis got Murloc Warleader so late, because he did have a pretty good board of Murlocs earlier, and that would have been able to make them very scary to deal with. But again, Artosis going to just go for the attack and invite the attack from the rogue rather than trying to trade.
Yeah, and, you know, he knows that his opponent has that deadly poison sitting right there, and he is hesitating to play the War Leader, but of course if the Young Priestess buffs the War Leader, it's going to be much harder to deal with.
Ah, exactly, and you need something along the lines of Eviscerate, or maybe an Argent Commander.
You know, Argent Commander and Dark Iron Dwarf are both good options here. He decides to go for the Commander, which, you know, is definitely very reasonable. It's probably, you know, going to be the Young Priestess eating the dagger despite, you know, a little bit of tension there, only needing 1 damage, but pushing 3 into it because he just wants to start turning the game around.
You know, you can kind of make a case that Chakki may have slipped up a little bit here because he did end up using his Argent Commander and drawing an Eviscerate. He could have dealt with the board, got a Dark Iron Dwarf for 4/4 body while keeping his Argent. Because usually if you want to go for the draw anyways, you want to draw first before your options. You have to exert your mana.
Yeah, interestingly enough, you know, he maybe would have been better off, you know, playing the Dark Iron and seeing what would have happened. But, you know, if he didn't pick up the Eviscerate, his turn would have been worse.
True, but if you're going to trade the
he is
Loot
going for the throat right now. He has a 10 damage Argent Commander this turn. He's going to go back down to 8, but that Cold Blood is doing work again.
You can even you can keep Eviscerate for any threats, but why not just drop the Nat Pagel?
Yeah, he picks up a card off of Nat Pagel. Why not?
But as if that's the deciding factor of this game, absolutely not.
It's you know, in a way, unfortunately, this game was probably already over with Chakki at 12. He picks up an Arcane Golem, but it's a turn too late. He really needed it last turn to keep that pressure up and, you know, have another thing in play that needed to be dealt with, and just a little bit too slow this turn. You know,
I really don't see what he can do. He still can play his entire hand, even if he's desperate. Play the Murloc Tidehunter and kill off with a Mortal Coil or something to draw maybe a Soulfire, reduce the damage. But
yeah, that's probably what he's considering doing right now. He might as well, you know, take a look at what he can possibly pick up. You know, if he gets a Soulfire, it's a Murloc War Leader yet again. You know, just never having it at a time when he can, you know, use it proactively.
And, you know, don't be fooled, although Chakki had 12 health, if Artosis drew the right combination of cards, he still could do a lot of damage, but it's not going to matter. Chakki will end game number 2 with an Eviscerate to the face.
It's been 2 pretty quick games so far. You know, neither one of them, I believe, has reached, you know, that turn 10 threshold, that maximum mana limit. Both of them ended just before, you know, players hit that 10 mana. So both of them have been pretty quick. You know, definitely a faster pace than we've seen, a couple nights ago, with some, very, very long control versus control games. These are blisteringly fast.
This is crazy. And I think it's kind of interesting because neither player, except for Artosis maybe in the first couple of turns, neither player are really hesitating because when you play aggro versus a really fast-paced tempo game, it's just pretty easy to decide what you need to do. Overall, though, I mean, Artosis is now down to his last deck, and it's a Paladin class. Paladin, what do you think about this matchup real quick?
So, I haven't, I'm going to get a chance, to see the deck list for the first time here right now. And, it looks like it's definitely a control Paladin. This is one where when you're sitting on the side of the Rogue, you just don't want to run afoul of too many of their, sweeper combos. They, usually run equality along with cards that combine with equality to kill all of their opponent's creatures. But of course, that means you need to draw equality.
Tough loss for Artosis in game 2. Let's go to the couches and see what the players are up to.
Hi, this is Monk, and I'm here with Team Managrind after Chakki has taken a lead over Artosis 2-0. Chakki, pretty good games?
Yeah, for me.
You're pretty well known as an aggressive player, and in that game, or in both those games, you showed a pretty aggressive style with that Rogue. Many of the other players, especially the players from Team DogeHouse, they much prefer Miracle Rogue over the aggressive Rogue. Why did you choose the more aggressive Rogue, where many people thought it was weaker?
I definitely think that in a series like this, where we bring a bunch of decks over the course of a few days, it's good to have like some aggressive decks to keep their deck list honest in a sense, so they can't just run really greedy stuff and trounce all over us.
No, your teammate Reels ran the same deck, right?
Yeah.
What do you think was the difference between how you played it and how your games went over his games?
Reels had a really rough draw in his game, and I mean, Nick drew like really well on Shaman, so it was just a bad game for the deck, and I mean that happens for anything. So.
Well, what about your teammates? What did you think about those games?
I think that what was the first game again? I don't remember. It was the Warrior versus right. It was a pretty good game, but I think if he would have played the Ragnaros on round 8, he would have a lot bigger chance because he played the Think Master instead, and that's also a 50-50. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I understand his reasoning with that, because Chakki didn't have any answer for the Ragnaros if he would have hit the Argent Commander. So the game would have turned out completely different. In game 2, we kind of knew Artosis was going to play Murlocs beforehand, so you could actually mulligan for that. And it went like really good. He top decked the backstab, which really decided the game.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Team Managrind. But now we'll go back to Reels, your teammate, and Frodan.
All right, the action's been fast and furious. Game number 3 is about to begin. Artosis needs a comeback now.
We'll be right back with Fight Night.
I got a huge deck. How big is your deck?
Man, I am really good at Hearthstone. You know what? Actually, I should be playing the next Fight Night. You know what? I think I can find 3 other people in this building who will play with me. Yo, Evan, what's up, man? Yo, so listen, I was thinking, maybe we gather our own 4 guys and we participate in Hearthstone. Me, you, and some of the other people.
You playing Hearthstone? Dan, you're no good at Hearthstone, man.
Hey, Victoria. So I'm really sorry I couldn't make it to the Christmas party last time, but I know how we can make it up to you. See, there's this thing that we do called Fight Night Hearthstone, and I'm trying to gather my own team of 4 players, and I was thinking maybe we play on the team, since I'm really good and you're pretty good yourself, maybe we can get together and win some of that $5,000. What do you think? Vic?
Ich spreche kein Englisch.
Yo, Flo, the lab producer. Listen, man, I know you're really busy and all because there's all these vouchers and stuff coming in, but if you have a few minutes, I feel like if we gather our own Hearthstone team and compete in Fight Night, then we can make some more money, and who better to ask than the money man himself. So, I was thinking maybe we get
Sorry, no. The fossil has spoken.
So I couldn't find my Hearthstone team, but maybe you can. ESGN TV is looking for a Hearthstone team to come compete in Berlin, Germany in the next season of Fight Night Hearthstone. And if you and 3 other people are interested, send a video application of why you guys should be competing to here. Golden ticket at ESGNTV.com. Good luck. Maybe you'll have better chances than I did. Must be 18 or older to enter. Only 1 entry per team. By applying, you agree that your video may be published and publicly mocked. All applicants must have a passport, maintain good personal hygiene, and not suck at Hearthstone.
Welcome back to Fight Night.
All right, welcome to Game 3. Now, Chakki will be facing up against a Control Paladin. I mean, you don't really see too many aggressive Paladins that often in tournament play. You normally see Control of that caliber, but it's still possible, right, to see an aggressive Paladin as well.
Yeah, you know, interestingly enough, you know, obviously the sort of test season 3 has been the rise of, you know, the bum rush, you might call it. There's just been, you know, a whole slew of hyper-aggressive decks that are floating around. You know, this, though, from Artosis, certainly is not one of them. He's on Control Paladin, and he's got a Nat Pagel.
Yeah, Nat Pagel that whiffed. And you know what? It's probably because of all the negative things Artosis has said about Nat Pagel over time. He heard it.
You know, it certainly could be. He's going to let it go for a turn. He could kill it, but he wants to develop his board. He wants to, you know, sort of use the free damage, so to speak, from the Loot Hoarder to kill it. Looks like he's going to get a chance to do so.
Yep, just reinforce and pass. That's the key, especially with the Twilight Drake and a Mountain Giant. You were telling me these are 2 of the key cards, especially if you're on the coin, to be able to load up your hand and put out some big pressure. And all of a sudden, Rogue, without cards like Sap to really be able to destroy that tempo, is going to struggle a little bit.
Yeah, you know, the Mountain Giant would have been, you know, an absolutely perfect card to have in hand if Nat Pagel had picked up a couple cards for him, you know, on the turns that he was able to, you know, have end. He didn't pick up a whole bunch yet. Chakki may or may not kill it this turn. I would have to imagine that he would.
Yeah.
You know, of course, he, you know, understands the threat that additional cards might mean coming from a Control Paladin. You know, maybe he still thinks that it's, you know, a more mid-range Paladin that could run Nat Pagel. You know, I have to imagine, though, that especially considering he played the hero power on turn 2, he's looking at Control. So he takes out Pagel, uses the backstab, bashes into it with his Loot Hoarder. Now he has an interesting choice to make here. He has a Loot Hoarder in play with 1 health that can get taken out by the hero power. It looks like he's going to decide to develop his board and let the Loot Hoarder die, which, of course, he's going to pick up a card off of it, but it's really no card for no card. You know, a free token, and, you know, pick up another card into his hand.
Still pretty annoying for Artosis, because, you know, in this scenario, if you didn't have to burn it on Nat Pagel, you would have had not only another card, but you could have also coined out maybe something like the Twilight Drake and put the onus back on Rogue to deal with it. Now, speaking of Pagel,
you know, he's gonna get his own Nat Pagel trying to work for him. He bashes into the token.
I have a feeling he's gonna draw immediately. Oh, never mind. It's just because of the way the tides turn sometimes.
Yeah, you know, the fish, they're hiding. They've seen their brothers and sisters get fished up over and over. They've had enough. They're hiding for now. You know, who knows when they'll come back to the feeding grounds.
Could be as soon as next turn. Artosis' play is pretty straightforward here, Twilight Drake. Still doesn't really have that much to develop right now, other than just that 4/7 right now, but still pretty good.
Yeah, you know, interestingly enough, you know, Chakki doesn't have any, you know, access to any silence to, you know, take out the Drake with ease. So he has to choose right now on this turn whether he wants to initially play around it or whether he wants to go, in a way, almost all in to deal with it.
And when you say all in, maybe you're saying like trade the Harvest Golem with its little buff and like an Eviscerate, or how?
Yeah, exactly. You know, so he has, you know, a couple choices of how he could kill it. You know, he can suicide, you know, the majority of, you know, the board that he already has established. He decides to play a Deadly Poison. I don't know if this means he's going to kill the Twilight Drake, but he does. He uses the poison. He uses the Eviscerate, takes it out. He uses, you know, a card and a half, take out the Twilight Drake. Sometimes difficult to deal with, makes it look pretty easy.
And so it looks like Artosis' camp is not very happy with the result. True Silver Champions, pretty nice top deck.
Yeah, you know, interestingly enough, if Nat Pagel could have picked him up 1 more card earlier in the game, he would have been able to slam a Mountain Giant here. still being a card away. He
you're
can choose to do it next turn if he wants to. May still be good enough. Picks up the True Silver Champion, definitely a good card.
Now, I think he's just mulling over, should I kill the Nat Pagel? Is it worth it? Should I kill the Harvest Golem?
Yeah, definitely.
So you're saying, I think you should kill the Nat Pagel, just in my opinion, but it's because I feel like killing the Harvest Golem doesn't really accomplish too much. Rogue can still buff stuff with Defender of Argus, can still be able to just get a lot of minions on the board and flood it. So if you're kind of resetting the board 2-1, it doesn't really mean too much unless you want to go for like a follow-up Consecration or something, which
right.
he doesn't want to do.
And, you know, as it turns out, it ends up being a good choice because he does have that Defender of Argus. You know, Artosis coming to the same conclusion. He doesn't really have a choice, Chakki, but to, you know, play this Argus. He might even, you know, use his weapon for damage and, you know, equip a new one.
Yeah, it's looking pretty dry so far, and the 4 health doesn't really help too much against the Harvest Golem, just get a little bit more damage on it. Artosis can play that turn 6 Giant, and I feel like this is the best time to use it.
Yeah, you know, it seems really likely that he's going to, you know, his you know, game from the control perspective basically starts right now. He's got a more advanced board than Chakki, and Chakki's going to have to dig deep to come up with an answer.
And he already used 1 Eviscerate, and he might be forced to use a second one, because he does have 4 damage, 5 on the board, and he could, well, he has a SI7 agent as well.
You know, he can kill this too, but he's trading multiple cards and,
Yeah,
you know, more than
it's very
one card
inefficient.
worth of resources every turn to deal with these giant threats that Artosis is putting out. He sees how many cards Artosis has in his hand, and he can come to the same conclusion of what we already know. These threats are not stopping anytime soon.
A quick shout out to Koyuki, because this deck really resembles a lot of what he already has introduced, not only to tournament play, but also in Fight Night from previous seasons. Now, Chakki still is going to be really inefficient. Even if he wants to use like the SI7 agent and Eviscerate, he has to activate it with something like a Deadly Poison and just continue to just wail, but it just doesn't look very, very good right now, situation-wise.
Yeah, you know, as far as the immediate board is concerned, he's going to be able to deal with this Mountain Giant. I think he is going to use his damaged Golem, probably alongside Cold Blood and the SI7 agent to deal with it. That'll leave him a 2-3 and a 3-3 in play, but he has to imagine that, again, this is not going to be the end of Artosis's, you know, giant monsters that are going to be coming his way. And I bet he's a little bit nervous, at least at this point.
Yeah, and, well, I guess he's just got to do what he's going to. Instead of using Eviscerate, I guess Cold Blood. Your thoughts?
You know, the 2-1 Golem is probably dead anyways. I imagine, you know, he figures Artosis has some way to kill it relatively easily. So, you know, he just wants to cash it in while he can. If there were a taunt to present itself, the Cold Blood would become a lot less good. The Eviscerate can go anywhere it wants.
That's true. It can go anywhere, and you're not limited by something like a taunt. Now, we turn 7. Artosis has a few plays available to him, but you know, if you play the Guardian of Kings, you're not going to be able to play something like the Molten Giant. But Guardian of Kings has a big enough body. You know your opponent has 1 charge left of the Deadly Poison. I feel like it's a pretty safe card to play at this point, don't you think?
Yeah, you know, he hasn't drawn anything like a Wild Pyromancer, you know, to help deal with his board more efficiently. He could slam the Molten Giant right now, but, you know, it doesn't deal with the board as it stands. I think he, you know, will probably end up being as mana efficient as possible, playing that Guardian of Kings, picking up a few health, and, you know, maybe even if he gets knocked down a little bit on health next turn, he'll be able to play the Molten Giant alongside the Sun Fury at the same time.
I think playing a Molten Giant in general, just anything that isn't being able to make your board presence a little bit stronger is a little bit risky, just because you don't know if the rogue is holding something like a Leroy, and that puts you at 14 damage already.
Yeah, you know, he decides to, you know, play the hero power instead. He ends up, you know, telling that SI7 agent that he needs to follow the rules. He's, you know, playing dirty.
And then he can drop the Sun Fury, give taunt to the Aldor.
You know, I wonder if he made this play because he wanted to lose a little bit more life, and, you know, he might have some pause here because he might decide that, you know, maybe he's not as safe at 16 as he thought he was.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of reasons why he wouldn't drop the Guardian of Kings. I think he's just really scared of potentially like a finishing combo of what Rogue has, because even though it's 1 card, it still could be anything. We know it's an Eviscerate, and we do see a BGH draw right now, which isn't exactly the most helpful right now for Chakki.
Yeah, you know, he still has the other half of the Deadly Poison, so he's able to, you know, deal with the Aldor Peacekeeper pretty easily. He's able, you know, he just equips another weapon, but in a way, he's really quite gassed out right now.
Yeah. And I know Artosis is really going to think about maybe even doing something like a lay on hands because he really loves being able to draw his cards.
You know, I think it's very likely, he's probably either going to play the Drake and the Giant, or he'll play the Giant alongside a Consecrate to clear out his opponent's board. He's sitting at 14. I have to imagine that's the play he's going to make. You know, he no longer has access to the Sun Fury Protector to give the Molten Giant taunt, so he'll probably clear out his opponent's board and just keep as safe as possible.
Definitely is the most important thing, just staying as safe. Again, rogues can just burst for so much damage. Consecration, finishing out everything, and a pretty solid turn here for Artosis, and it's not exactly a very good situation for him up until this point where he was able to control the board. He kept losing a lot, but I feel like he did good.
Chakki already having the big game hunter and drawing a very nice card for this circumstance. He picks up almost exactly what he needed. Exactly on curve, right on 9 mana, plays the Argent Commander, bashes in, his opponent is on 10, and he needs to find even more answers.
So turn number 9, he draws a Wild Pyromancer.
You know, not having played the Guardian of Kings previously, you know, now he's in even a more dire circumstance where now he might have to rely just on the health that he's going to receive from it to stay alive. He has other choices, but he can't quite yet Wild Pyro and lay on hands, which would be ideal. If he can survive until next turn, that could be enough to give him the options he needs to stay in the game. For now, he's just gonna have to bank on the Guardian of Kings and hope that the 6 health is enough.
It's just such a tough situation because, you know, you weren't necessarily expecting something like a BGH, and you know, Artosis did overextend because of that.
So we know that Chakki is actually, what is he? He's 3 damage away from lethal. You know, if he were to draw something like his second Argent Commander, that would end the game. Something like maybe an Azure Drake into, you know, another perfect card. I don't remember if he's played both Cold Blood this game yet, so that could be an out to win as well.
He played 1 Cold Blood, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so he still has number 2 waiting in the wings. He picks up an Argent Squire. Not quite going to be good enough here.
He still also has finishers like Leroy in his deck where he can, if he draws it, it's just incredible damage out. But again, Artosis does have ways to heal. He has a lay of hands waiting in retaliation.
Here we go.
Yeah, he picks off that, you know, 1/1. He doesn't want his Divine Shield to be removed so easily from his Argent Commander. Re-equips. Now the question here becomes, does he want to? He's already seen 1 Molten Giant. Does he want to risk possibly giving Artosis another free one? I don't think he has another choice. I'm pretty sure he's going to attack in. He'll probably play the Squire and the Eviscerate, but he's thinking about possibly trading, you know, both his Eviscerate and his Divine Shield for that Guardian of Kings.
But it opens himself up for another Consecration if Artosis ends up drawing it.
Yeah, I think ultimately the conclusion he's going to come to is that he needs to tap the top of his deck, say, give me the goods, and, you know, hope that he draws something like Leroy or anything else that can give him finishing damage, you know, on, you know, the next turn or two. He does end up going for the face. He doesn't use the Eviscerate.
Yeah, he's pushing for damage and needs to go. He wants to go for the win.
He hides the Eviscerate from his opponent, which is not necessarily, you know, a bad choice. It, you know, no matter what he draws next turn, he'll be able to cast.
So Pyro and lay on hands to just heal up and to pop the shield maybe, and then be able to kill one of the.
It's definitely very likely, you know, he'll be able to kill the 4/2, and then he'll be facing down a 4/1 and a 1/1 from 16 life, only 6 damage showing, and he'll be at 16. Even Leroy would not be able to kill him in 1 turn. This really does set him up. Ooh, he even draws Alex Straza. So
very nice.
He's definitely going to be able to, you know, have a good chance at turning the game around off of that play. It was very, very nice removing the Divine Shield. He even has a 3/1 in play that, you know, threatens to trade with another one of his opponent's resources, which Chakki is almost completely out of.
Artosis is just one of these guys that really loves playing Paladin in general, just because he really feels comfortable with it. Oh,
he picks up a card, but he doesn't have enough mana for both this turn. If he did, he would have exactly lethal with just 1 more mana. He's going to cash in his Argent Squire to kill the 5/1, probably use his weapon to kill the 3/1, hit in for 4 damage. I can't imagine that he's going to, you know, maybe he throws the Eviscerate out right now while he has the 4/4.
Right. And he has the damage extra bonus from the Azure Drake.
Yeah, it would be 5 damage right now. If the Drake were for some reason to die, you know, his Eviscerate gets less powerful. But he decides to hold on to it. You know, if he were to draw something like an Argent Commander next turn, that will end up having been a mistake. because he won't have enough mana to cast all of those cards next turn.
I'm feeling a Twilight Consecration quality play here from Artosis. You get a 4/6 on the board, 4/7, and then you'll be able to completely put the wipe the board as well. But I don't really know if that's what Artosis is going to do. It looks like he wants the Peacekeeper instead.
Yeah, he's sitting on 12 life right now, and you know,
still feel like that's a little too greedy.
As long as he clears out his opponent's board, you know, Chakki will be on very, very few possible cards that he can use to, you know, end the game immediately. He might be down to, you know, perhaps just the Cold Blood. I don't remember if he's played both Deadly Poisons or not. I forgot to take notes for this game. But, you know, I have to imagine that he's, you know, not going to be happy leaving those creatures in play. You know, if he just slams Alexstrasza, you know, the game's going to the game's going to end. Chakki has hidden the Eviscerate, though. So, as far as Artosis knows, there might not be a huge amount of direct damage.
Oh, okay. So, the Equality and then the Twilight Drake, that's right. I was suggesting Twilight Drake before by accident, but yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't want to Equality his own Twilight Drake, so he does clear out his opponent's board, gives himself a significant threat, which, you know, is going to be relevant because he wants to, you know, be able to kill, you know, anything that he plays as soon as possible. And, you know, we're seeing possibly some of the mana constraint here. You know, could come into play next turn. Chakki's going to be down to one more draw, maybe a second card from the Loot Hoarder.
It's so sad that he's just short by 1 damage, but... and imagine if he was able to drop the 5 damage from the Eviscerate with the Azure Drake, he would actually be able to finish.
You know, he has another Argent Commander in the deck, and if he, you know, were to think on what his possible outs were, I would have to imagine he would Eviscerate here, you know, just to put his opponent down as low as possible. Of course, you know, we know that Artosis has Alexstrasza, which is a card that isn't always in Control Paladin. So, you know, if he uses the Eviscerate, Artosis will Alexstrasza himself back up to 15. He ends up passing the turn, which in this circumstance does end up being right, although he's probably down to one out left to win.
So Artosis draws a Tink Master Overspark. Not really useful in this scenario. I don't really see too much what Artosis can do. Does he Alexstrasza himself up here in trade? Because I feel like he just needs to be able to, again, control as much of the board.
Yeah, you know, his opponent is going to be on a 1-turn clock next turn, you know, no matter if he trades with his Twilight Drake or not. So killing the Loot Hoarder, you know, seems like a good idea. He's going to Alexstrasza himself back up to 15. He's going to cross his fingers and hope that his opponent doesn't have 15 damage. Seems unlikely that he will. He draws a Backstab. So Chakki doesn't quite get there. Artosis, the Control Paladin, is going to take game 3. He's not going to get Nat Bageled.
He's not dead yet. He could still kill off things with an Eviscerate, and then, as far as he knows, he still has a chance. Right?
That's true. You know, that is true. He's not dead just quite yet.
He can actually clear the board if he really wants.
He can, you know,
actually, no, he can't. 1/1/1 would be still.
He can use his cards in a way to kill off some of his opponent's creatures. That being said, I don't know how he's possibly going to, you know, win the game, you know, after that. But he's just going to play the Harvest Golem. He's going to hold on to his other guys and hope that this is good enough. His opponent has at least 8 damage next turn, and, you know, may or may not have a way to kill him. He's going to cross his fingers, hope that Artosis can't finish it off. But he's still on a, you know, very short list of outs that he can possibly have, you know, to finish off Artosis instead.
Artosis draws a Holy Light, another way to just add icing onto the cake. He can drop 2 Alexstrazzas, and I really feel like he's in a great position if he even wants to reduce the damage of his opponent by dropping a Peacekeeper, but you don't really need to. Artosis is just in prime position to win here.
Yeah, he picks up, you know, nice card off the top. He already had the Faceless just to make sure that there's no way, you know, second big game hunter or something coming out from Chakki. You know, keep that pressure on the board, heal himself up, and Sudoku.
Go out in the most honorable way as possible. Game number 3 goes to Artosis, and all of a sudden, a potential glimpse of hope for the team captain.
Yeah, you know, the Artosis saying, "I'm not done yet." You know, he wants to make sure that his team comes, you know, stays ahead in the series here on the, you know, 4th night of Fight Night. They're going to go back, talk strategy, see what they want to, you know, worry about, you know, in terms of what classes his opponent might pull out next, work on, you know, what kind of starting hands they might keep, see what they know.
All right, cool. So let's go ahead and go to the couches and see what the players are talking about.
Do you actually realize we're like one life short from dying?
No, I mean, I had no idea that I was one life short. I knew that it would be like kind of close. I didn't think it was that close because I used so much life gain that game. And I couldn't imagine that he still had enough cards to do that much damage, but that's Rogue for you, man. I can do a lot of damage out of nowhere.
Okay, so you still are going to play Paladin, and do you think he's going to take Druid?
I don't know. I thought he was going to take Druid, but everyone thinks he's going to take Warlock. So I guess they all think Warlock. Probably Warlock then.
Okay, good luck anyway. You can do it.
See you after the break for more Fight Night.
Wow, such Fight Night. Much players, many production value, very professional.
So this soup's pretty good though, man.